About 3/4 of UN members now recognize the State of Palestine, and that figure has risen in recent days as Western countries, including the UK, Canada, and Australia, move to recognize Palestinian statehood. Now, the African Union has repeatedly affirmed its unwavering support for Palestinian self-determination, and most African governments have had formal ties with Palestine for decades, although there are important practical differences in how the support is translated into policy across the continent. Now, today, we ask what all that means for African diplomacy and ordinary people across Africa. Today on The Conversation, I am joined by Dr. Fatima Hendricks, member Global Sumud Flotilla in Athens, Greece at the moment. And we also have Dr. Brian Reuben, Executive Chairman, 16th Council and Founder, Africa Economic Summit in London, UK. Thank you so much, gentlemen and lady, for joining us at this time.
Thank you so much.
All right, so let me begin with you, Dr. Hendricks. You know, seeing you, we know you're on the Mediterranean Sea and you're a member of the Global Sumud Flotilla International, committee. So speak to us on the flotilla, and you're in one of the vessels. What is it all about and where is it headed at the moment?
Well, thank you so much. I'm a boat crew member on one of the 50 boats that make up the Global Sumud Flotilla. Boats have departed from Tunisia, from Spain, from Greece, and from Italy. And we're headed in unison towards the Palestinian shores in Gaza. The goal of the Global Sumud Flotilla in its 38th attempt is to break the siege of Gaza and deliver humanitarian aid. But not just deliver aid, it is to open up a sustainable humanitarian sea corridor of aid, knowing that and recognizing that Gaza has been experiencing a blockade by the occupying power of land, sea, and air over the past 3 decades.
Okay, so how far have you gone? How safe is it at the moment for you to enter Gaza via the waters?
In our history, it began in 2006 with the first flotilla leaving in 2008. Like I said, this is the 38th flotilla. About 5 of them have reached the shores of Gaza, and one did experience casualties in terms of deaths. That was the Mavi Marmara, and we all know about that in 2010. Currently, we are headed in international waters. We are in international waters, and we are totally legal and moral in our attempt to break this illegal siege of Gaza, and we carry humanitarian aid and supplies. During the past 8 days, which is how long our boat has been on the water, we have been tracked by drones, and we know about the 2 drone attacks. I'm sure everybody's aware that happened in Tunisia to prevent the flotilla from moving forward. So we do understand the risk, given that we have drones tracking us at night. But the bigger question is, why is it unsafe, and who is making it unsafe? When what we're doing is in line with international law, and we are volunteers that are merely delivering and trying to break the siege to open up this humanitarian sea corridor of aid. So we really need to question what is the intent of the occupying power by not allowing this large flotilla, the largest in history to date, from reaching the Palestinian shores in Gaza.
All right. Now, let's come back to you, Dr. Reuben, and let's come back to recognizing the State of Palestine. We'd love to hear your thoughts, because, we know the AU's position has been described as strong, but exactly what actions has the African Union or even African states taken beyond statements? And if you wish to speak on Dr. Hendricks, being on the sea on her way to deliver humanitarian aid to Gaza as well, please go ahead.
Well, thank you for having me. First, I would like to extend my regards to Dr. Hendricks, doing a great job. But you see, recognition isn't really a solution. What we're seeing is very, very symbolic. And this is not the first time the State of Palestine is being recognized. Over 150 countries, including many African nations, actually already recognize Palestine. But what matters now is that the coordinated recognitions by the UK, Canada, and Australia, quite recently, with that, the stakes rise and fresh diplomatic momentum is created. But that doesn't end the conflict. It doesn't also bring a ceasefire, right? It doesn't bring peace. So it's mostly symbolic. And Africa will be much more effective if it pursues strategic coordination, not enforce unanimity. So something like a small AU co-platform focusing on humanitarian aid and a rules-based states to states in a roadmap, complemented by flexible bilateral channels, is what I think the pragmatic sweet spot will be. Africa's role should focus less on symbolic endorsements and more on tangible impact. Because see, people are dying, people are living in their conditions. So these are issues. So things like humanitarian relief, governance support, and addressing security concerns for both Palestinian and Israel. This is what I think African nations will focus on. Because with this, considering the current state of the world, the current international order, where power trumps rules. Recognition is symbolic, will not bring an end to the suffering, innocent Palestinian citizens. Right, will not bring about a ceasefire, will not bring an end to the war. I think we need to be talking about things that are really more pragmatic. While recognition is important, I really don't see much it can do, especially with the United States not being supportive of it.
Okay, let's see if Dr. Hendricks has a different view. Dr. Hendricks, you did hear what Dr. Reuben said. He talked about, African support being merely symbolic and it doesn't bring peace to Palestine because some reporting estimates that roughly 147 to 151 UN members recognize Palestine. So, what does it mean in terms of diplomacy for Palestinian leverage?
A really good comment around the fact that the material conditions on the ground have not changed for Palestinians. And if we look at what has happened since the beginning of state recognition, the situation materially on the ground has actually gotten worse. What we see is that Gaza City is being decimated in a scorch of the earth campaign. People have been forcibly displaced 20 to 30 times. This genocide is a mass disabling crime against humanity. And we have seen the ethnic cleansing and the war crimes being committed. And yet, within the context of the African participation, we have statements around support and tangible action in terms of, for example, the ICJ. But as a South African, I must say I'm disappointed on two fronts in particular. One of them is the sale of coal that is being allowed in Africa to be exported to the occupying power. And that coal sale continues to, for example, Glencore. And we are calling on a trade embargo and sanctions and divestment from the occupying power Israel. The other issue, which is also needs to be highlighted, is that of the Israel occupation forces that still visit African countries freely without any repercussions. And given their participation in this genocide, they need to be held to account. So, in as much as there are tangible messages of support and statements of support, the material conditions and the practical implementation is lagging. And it is up to ordinary people from around the world to make voice on this issue in very clear ways. I mean, as a member of the Global Sumud Flotilla, I'm an ordinary person. I've never sailed before this 3,000 kilometers that we're doing. We have mothers and fathers, young people, old people. I mean, I've got a 71-year-old on the boat with me, a woman from Algeria. We've got another sister from Ireland, never sailed before. And this is because governments have failed. And now it's up to people, ordinary people, to get onto boats to try to break the siege of Gaza. We are doing what governments should have been doing and should have done a very long time ago. So we need to be optimistic on the one hand, but very real about what is symbolic action and what are tangible material actions that can be taken on the ground so that the conditions of the people actually changes and that this genocide ends. Because unless that is done, we will not see any future state that will be left that can be called a Palestinian state. I mean, we see the annexation of the West Bank. So when we talk about Palestinian statehood, we need to be very clear about what exactly we're speaking about. What land exactly are we referring to when we speak of a Palestinian state? And I think that's the key question that we need to address.
All right, now speaking of what the government needs to do, we know that a lot of African governments have actually, lent their voices, especially South Africa, they've boldly done so. Now, coming back to you, Dr. Reuben, has African recognition of Palestine actually affected Israel's relations with African states? Because we know that some African governments still maintain and have even deepened security and tech ties with Israel while publicly backing Palestine.
That is the reason why I am more concerned about what really works. That's why I insist that just recognition is insufficient, because you realize that recognition comes at a cost, and you have to look at the practical implications of wherever policy position you adopt. Yes, what is going on in Gaza isn't right. What is going on in Palestine isn't right. The Palestinian people deserve more. They need more opportunities. They need to be safe. They need to be able to take care of themselves. So, but what I'm saying is that recognition doesn't really solve that problem. Because you see, with the United Kingdom, for example, recognizing the state of Palestine, it doesn't translate to the United United Kingdom now strengthening or entering into bilateral relationship with Hamas, right? Which Israel has consistently argued targets it, and Hamas is recognized by most people around the world and most countries as a terrorist organization. So it has to be balanced. That's why I think that what is more important is what needs to be done, what is really realistic. Okay, the African countries should not focus on recognition because others are recognition. I think that what matters is what are we doing to ensure that humanitarian aid is reaching those it should get to? What governance support are you providing? And how are you addressing security concerns for both parties? Because at the end of the day, it's about the people. It's not about symbolic endorsement. That already exists. That's why I say that. I don't see a lot coming out of what UK and Canada and Australia and maybe France is going to be doing or has done. I think that we should focus on how to really address the key issues, right? The key issues about aid reaching people, about finding a two-state solution.
Dr. Reuben,
because recognition isn't going to help us get there.
Dr. Reuben, we agree that it shouldn't be symbolic, but what can Africa really do? Do you think that can economic pressure be used as a leverage?
There are three things I would recommend, and these steps are critical. First of all, a continent-wide humanitarian initiative to deliver food, medicine, shelter directly to civilians in need. Second would be a standing AU Middle East diplomatic task force to engage Israel, the Palestinian Authority, and key global powers. And that will ensure a credible roadmap for peace and governance reforms. The third would be Africa maintains trade, trade and security partnership with Israel, because you see that Africa also has interests that needs to be protected, right? And Africa has a lot of problems that it is dealing with. And the cost of just supporting Palestine and ending relationship with Israel could be very, very serious. So the third one I said is maintain trade, fake security partnership with Israel. They condition them on adherence to international humanitarian law. Now, this ensures Africa is not merely being symbolic. It is actually shaping outcomes, safeguarding human lives and strengthening its global credibility. These are attributes that I think African nations should take.
Okay, now let's hear from Dr. Hendricks as well. What can Africa do, aside, being symbolic? Because we know the AU at times has urged measures against Israel. Are African economies positioned to use trade or even investment measures? What will the costs and risks be?
I think we have a very tangible strategy within civil society around boycott, divestment, and sanctions. It is part of a global movement pressurizing governments to engage in BDS action. Just like apartheid South Africa was isolated economically, institutionally, through, for example, isolation of the educational institutions and corporations, etc. The same kind of pressure needs to be exerted on Israel. Israel is an occupying power. It is an apartheid state. And as South Africans, we fully understand the relationship between the Palestinian people and ourselves as oppressed people by an occupying power. And so I think the strategy is around being very clear on trade embargoes. There are ample countries within the African Union that can trade with each other, as well as a very large and sustained growing BRICS bloc that can offer many opportunities. And we are not bound to Israel or to its allies that are complicit in this genocide. So I think we need to have moral clarity, and with that moral clarity needs to be implementation of the kind of policy statements and the diplomacy to back it up. This is a time of courage, sumud, and clarity. And this is what we need to do. So, for example, today we had Helen Ziller, who is running for mayor of a big city in South Africa, in Johannesburg. And when she was asked about the genocide, she responded in a very vague way to say genocide is a very big word. She was very evasive. And she is basically saying that, she has never been to Gaza and really can't comment, and then deflected the question. So we have these kind of maneuvers politically, internally in our countries, and I think it is up to ordinary people to hold these politicians and their complicity with Israel to account. Through the ballot boxes, elections are coming up in a lot of countries, and I think we need to put on the agenda very clearly the issue of Palestine as a justice issue, as an issue for the global community to galvanize around. Electorally.
All right, so we're actually about wrapping up. In one sentence, right, just before I come back to Dr. Reuben, Dr. Hendricks, in one sentence, how would you feel if Palestine achieves full UN membership now?
I would ask on what land would be my question. I think we have expansionist policy that is being implemented right now by Israel, the occupying power. And so the question is always going to be on what land, with what borders, what are the conditions thereof. This is a journey of justice that needs to be meted out. This is an occupation that is long-standing, over 7 decades, and so there's long history and a long road ahead before we can start talking about what a Palestinian state would look like. Okay. Thank you so much for the opportunity, and greetings to all in Nigeria.
Thank you very much, and please be safe, okay? Let's come back to you, Dr. Reuben. Please let's hear from you. What if Palestine achieves full UN membership, or if Western powers formally recognize Palestinian statehood? How should African states respond?
Well, African states will have to remain diplomatic, because you see, I will argue that the major problem we have in Palestine is not recognition of statehood, as important as that could be. For example, take a look at Taiwan. Taiwan is under constant threat, constant existential threat, having not really formal diplomatic relations with many countries, yet it is thriving. Yet it is thriving on the global stage. So I argue that the major problem with Palestine thriving is not the recognition. But of course, if that happens, Africa has a moral obligation to stand against colonialism and support justice. But we must be realistic as well. The Palestinian Authority faces governance challenges, and Hamas actions threaten civilians as well. So blanket endorsements risk appearing naive or even unbalanced. So Africa's support should focus on the people. I've maintained that many times, ensuring humanitarian reliefs, advocating for governance reforms, and addressing security concerns for all parties. That is the approach that balances moral principles with practical outcomes and preserves Africa's credibility on the global stage. That is also the approach I believe will deliver the much needed freedom and peace that the people of Palestine requires. So that has to be our focus. So Africa has, the moral narratives are important, but it cannot substitute for action. Millions of people continue to suffer despite decades of symbolic support.
All right. Well, we appreciate you and your thoughts. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. I would love to thank you, Dr. Brian Reuben, Executive Chairman, 16th Council and Founder, Africa Economic Summit, London, UK, and also Dr. Fatima Hendricks, member, Global Sumud Flotilla, Athens, Greece. Thank you so much. And also, please stay safe, Dr. Hendricks.